All right, so today my plan for a video was to run through an overview of the AT framework or Advanced Thema Framework, which we'll refer to as ATF going forward. But there was a fair bit of feedback from people just wanting to see how do you use it? What would you use to create content, to create wireframes, to get your homepage started, all that sort of stuff. So I thought it might be a better idea to actually go through and just play with it, create some content, and then in the next video we can go into detail of where you find everything. So this is really just a demonstration of where it's at. I have prepared a little bit, but I am just going to ad lib as I go. So bear with me. I'm certainly not the most fluid videographer, but I get there in the end. So just bear with me. So I'm going to show you exactly what I've got to start with, and then we'll work through creating content. So I've got a really basic style guide that I've created. This isn't the official ATF style guide. This is something that I've created just so I can work with it for now. And we've got some topography set up. We can see a nice curve with our topography there. Those settings are done in ATF to give us that scale and also the clamp so that we get the size as we scale the width of the screen. I've set my body font all to Inter and my heading font all to Inter Tight, which I've uploaded as a custom font so that it is served locally from the web server, not directly from Google. So I've got my heading scale done, I've got my text scale done, I've got my spacing all done, I've got some colors all done, which I'm going to show you very shortly how to change. And my style guide's given me all the hex values and RGB values and RGBA values as well over here for my transparencies. So that's all done. And I'm also going to just show you another thing here, which is the home page. So I've created a blueprint where what I've done is I've created a few posts. So I've got just, I think, 6 posts in there, just dummy posts with featured images. I've created a custom post type using Metabox for a team. Where is that? That's theirs. There's my team members. I just added 3 team members. I actually just generated headshots using ChatGPT with the great new image generation in there. So I've just grabbed 3 sample team members so we can play with that. And then I've just created some pages which are blank except for the style guide. And then I can start playing with these and show you how it works. I also did do a Bricks, just a basic header and footer. So I've got my header and footer. I've got a style guide there as a template as well. Yeah, so that's where I'm at with this. And this is really all I've done in there now is in the pages. If I go into the home page, for example, you'll see that it's empty. I've got a header, a basic footer, and on my home page I've got no content. If I have a look at my AT importer, I've imported all of my CSS variables. I've only imported one palette, which is the AT framework one, and the contextual palette, which is available from Advanced Thema 3.2, which is currently beta. I've imported all of the global classes. I've imported all of my theme styles. My style sheet and my recipes are all done. So this is all ready to go, and I've done some basic settings. All right, so the theme itself is all imported as well, so that's all ready to go. And we have, if we look at the classes, whoops, wrong one. Look at my AT, Global Class Manager. I've got all our AT classes here, there. We have ATFC, that's my style guide classes, and that's it. I think we've got a test class under there. And I've got some placeholder classes I've made here and some has BG media classes so we can play with those as well. So really, really simple thing. We're going to use these placeholder classes just for wireframing out. So standard placeholder is just a grey box. Placeholder large, placeholder extra large, just as the height of the placeholder. I've got some icons that I put in the placeholder. So if it's a list, text, video, the default is a image. So let's have a look at that when we get to it. All right, so that is where I'm at. I'm completely blank apart from that. So I'm going to wireframe out firstly. So I'm going to firstly create a section just by adding a section here. That section, we'll put a header. Maybe we'll put 2 text boxes and a button. I'm also going to put in a box there. I'm not sure why that didn't expand out. I'll put a block in there. I'll put my heading and one of these inside there. Now I'm going to start calling these what they are. So I'm going to call this section, I'll just call this hero for now, and leave the container. I'll call this my header, and that's our heading. We'll call this our accent text, and we'll call this our lead text. Oh, not lead. And we'll give this the name of our CTA button. All right, so there's a very simple setup there. Now on our header, on our heading, we're going to make that an H1 because that's our hero header. And we're just going to put hero title. We'll give this call this our accent text. And we'll call this our lead. I'll just put the word lead in front of it. Okay, so we've got something going on there, ready to start styling. I would at this point in AT, I would right click on the section hero, class converter, and I'm just going to get my little loom thing out of the way here and just click create class. I don't need to change anything because I haven't said anything at the ID level. All I've done is create elements, change a bit of the text on them, and then right click and create my classes. So I've got all the BEM classes created now. So my section hero, my container is my section hero container, my section hero header. It's all done. So on my header, I'm going to get rid of all of my row gap. It's my header, row gap. Set that to 0 so they're nice and close together. I'm going to then set my hero title line height to be a line height of 1. Do the same with my accent. No, I won't do that just yet because I'm going to change that. I'm going to create a utility class for that. So I'm going to create a utility class for this. I'm just going to call it text accent because a second here. We're likely to use this same accent text in multiple places. So we treat this as what they call an atom in atomic design. It is not really styled as part of the hero. It's styled as an accent text, which would be used in multiple places. So I'm going to call this text accent. I like naming things as what they are and then what their modifier is. So it's text and it's got a variation or modification of accent. So I do text -- accent. That's just my methodology. You use whatever works for you. And on that, we're going to set our line height to 1. We're going to set our typography to be text transform uppercase. We might make that into tight. We'll set the letter spacing on that to say 3, and maybe we'll make it a little bit bolder. So we'll set it to 600 there. So we've got a bit bolder there. All right. So we've got some accent text style. I'm not going to set colors here. We can do, but because I'm going to show you how to use the color set, I'm not going to set a color on the accent text here. All right, now typically I've seen this a lot. You might want the accent to appear before the H1. So we go to the accent text. Make sure we're on the section hero accent text, not on the text accent. We don't want to set this for every version of or every time we've used text accent. We just want it on this hero. We want it to be above the title. So we go to there, we go into our layout and we set our order to -1. All right, so there's a start there. Okay, now let's get this some style so we can then start splitting out our sections. So I'm going to go to the section hero. I'm going to give this a color set. So this is an AT color set. So this is the reason I use prefixes. So anything with AT is part of the AT framework or ATF. So anything without it is not part of the framework. So my placeholders, my other utility classes I've created for this demo are not part of the framework because they don't have the AT in front of them. I know that for sure. So there's my color set. I'm going to make this a color set. I'll make it a neutral dark 4. There we go. So you'll see here, we've got our neutral dark 4 background, our heading, our lead text has all changed color to white. Our accent text has changed color to blue, which is our secondary color. Okay, so by default, our color set neutral D4 is setting our accent text to our secondary color. Right? So that's pretty simple, right? To do that, now we're going to create another section, and this section here we're going to add in the container. We're going to add we'll do the same sort of thing. We'll add a box, we'll add a heading, and we'll add some copy, another copy, and do we want a button in there? No, probably not, because this is going to be a call to action. So we're going to put our heading inside the block, this heading inside that block. We're going to leave that there. We'll do the same thing with it. We'll call this section about. Oops, spell that correctly. Section about. We'll call this our header. We'll call this our accent. And we'll call this our lead. And let's just get this cracking. So we're going to right click on our section about. Class converter. We should have all these BEM classes being created for us automatically. Create classes, yes. We want this text to be the same as the other accent text. We'll call this section accent. And we're going to give that a class of text dash accent. See, the beauty of naming these classes with what they are and then their variation, we just start typing what they are and we get the list of those. It's much easier to work through. Okay, let's do the same thing now with our header here. We're going to set our row gap to 0. We're going to set our line height on our heading. And again, you could do this if this is a common thing that you're going to do on everything. You can set utility classes on these as well. We'll do the same on that accent there. I think we've already got that in line height 1 anyway from the action we have from the accent text. Okay, now maybe we'll just leave that sitting underneath it. We're not going to set it on top. We'll leave that there as it is for now. We'll call this our lead. Okay, there's our lead there. All right, so there we go. So we've got a basic setup for that. Actually, we're just going to make sure that's on H2. It is by default with AT now. I think Bricks normally defaults to H3, but AT by default set that to H2. So I'm just going to make sure that's a heading and H2. All right, that's done. Okay, now what else are we going to put inside of actually, let's pull this section heading. Okay. Maybe we want to put grids inside these things. So let's create a grid inside our container. Call that a grid. And we'll just make one cell in here for now. Okay. And we're going to right click on our about section again, class converter, hit create classes, and that's going to create those extra classes. 3, what's the extra 3? I must have missed one previously. Let's have a quick look here. Container, header, heading. Oh, that must have renamed when I changed something here. So I'm just going to change that there. Sometimes the auto naming in AT, I've got to get that tamed and get used to that. Sometimes when you're typing in classes or typing into the text inputs, it names these elements. And then when you run your BEM creator, it creates different classes. So that's something I will probably switch off as soon as I find the setting for that. I noticed that previously and I just didn't get around to fixing it up. So I've got a grid here, which is my section about grid. I've got a cell, which is my section about cell. Okay. So the easiest thing to do here is if you want a indeterminate number of cells. Let's say, for example, you're going to run a post loop and you might have 1, you might have 6 posts. You might want to use an auto fill grid or an auto fit grid. If you want to have a set number of columns, then you're just going to use a normal grid. So I'm saying, I'll show you an example of that. Here's the grid there. So we're going to change this to be a grid. Well, we're making sure we're on our section about grid here. And then we can use this variable picker here. And with 83.2 and onwards, there's labels that Maxime has added to the variables. So you can name these to make more English readable specs. So it's a grid 1, grid 2, grid 3, etc. Previously, it was showing you the variable name. This is a lot more succinct than the whole variable name. So if you want to be a grid of 3, click on that and you've got a grid of 3. Okay. If you want this to fill in automatically, what we can do there is get rid of that. You can do it two ways. You can start typing fill. There you go. We've got a grid autofill there. So we've got a grid autofill happening. Or you can click on the V and we use the autofill, grid autofill there. Whatever tickles your fancy, whichever way you like to work. I tend to just start typing and use the autocomplete. I find that quicker. And now we've got a autofill grid, right? So on that grid there, remember I said I created some placeholder classes? I'm just going to add that class there now. So placeholder, and that placeholder class is going to add a placeholder with an image icon in there. Okay, if we want this to be a video, we can add the variation placeholder video. Okay, and that's going to make it a video placeholder. So this is just a little tip for wireframing. You just create these. If we want that to be taller, we make that placeholder L, okay, or XL. Actually, I don't think I did the XL. Yes, I did. It just didn't show up there. So there's the XL if we want those to be taller. So let's say in this case, we want these to look like they're going to be a card. We can just do that. And now I can duplicate that a couple of times and hit the save. And let's have a look at what that looks like on the front end. Okay, see, it's using the autofill. So it sets the minimum width of these and it's not filling the entire space. So what we can do there is if we added another one in the builder, it's going to wrap around. But if we double click on the structure here, you can see that it doesn't wrap around because it's got enough space to fit them in. So this will fit 4. So we'll fit 4 along there quite happily, and then it'll start wrapping after that. So you can do it that way, or if you wanted to, you could say, no, I actually want to make this a 3-column grid. So you come back into your grid, get rid of the auto fit there, autofill there, come back into your grid and set that to a grid of 3. You go, okay, what happens at there, that breakpoint? Still 3. What happens at that breakpoint? We actually want that to be 2. So use your picker or whatever you want, go to 2. And at what happens at this breakpoint? We want that to be 1. So use your picker again, make that 1. And we've just set up our grid, a 3-column grid here. I've got one extra, so I'm just going to delete that there. Let's just double click on my structure again just to get that back. So this is a fixed grid of 3. Right, so we're going to call this our section heading, and now I'm going to duplicate this, the whole section. That section there, I'm going to duplicate it. And what we're now going to do is show you how quick you can use this for wireframing in AT. So we're going to call this section post. Okay, now our naming is wrong. So we've got a section post for our element. But up the top left, we look here, our class name is section about. What I would do is right click on my section post, I'll go into my component class manager, and then I would use my bulk actions. We want to duplicate that class. I'm going to copy the name section about, so I only want the section about stuff in there. We're just going to duplicate those. We're going to find the section about and we're going to replace that with section post. All right. Now, these buttons here are important. We want to assign the duplicated class to the elements because we want the new names. We want to remove the old class from the elements because we don't want the section about classes on our section post, but we don't want to delete the old class from the global classes because we're still using those on the other section. So all we had to change here was the remove old classes from all elements to yes. Hit apply. We now have section post with a section post class. We have section post container with a section post container class. So just that one simple move, we've created a replica of that. And now we're going to have a look at actually styling these out. So I'm going to call this our about section. Maybe I'll call this our, yeah, I'll call that about section. We'll call this our posts or latest post, latest posts. We're not looking at copy here. We're just looking at how you rush through and do this. All right, now, actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a new section because I think we'll put a team section because I've got some team members in there. So I'm just going to collapse all of this and I'm just going to now replicate that again. I'm going to move it to the top under the hero. I'm going to call this team. Okay, right click, component class manager, bulk actions, duplicate. We're going to get our post, section post, word. We only want to rename those classes, so we're going to include those. We're going to change the section post to section team. Okay, and we want to remove the old class from the elements, set to yes, hit apply. Okay, done. And we've got a section team up here. Why have we got this team new there? Must have done it twice. I think I clicked the apply twice. Yep, that's all good. Okay, so on our team, we're going to start styling this now. So I'm going to call this our team. Our team. Who we are. I know these are terrible words before, terrible copy, but that's not what this is all about. Who we are. Our talented team members. Who you will work with. Okay, so we've got a bit of a blurb. We've got our header, accent, and a lead. Let's add some color to this. So we're going to add the color set. And we're going to add a color set. Let's make it a primary D. That'll do, primary D5. Okay, now we can see our accent text changed because we've changed that. We've set it to a primary D5. If we look at our primary D5 here and have a look at the CSS for that, we will see it's locked, so you can see it's just faded in the background here. But our accent text color is set to 80 secondary. We can override this. I wouldn't recommend editing these classes. I recommend creating an override or your own color set if you want to change these. But you can override these if you wish to. All right, so there we go. We've got a very simple setup there. Now, I would then go into each of these cells and I would get rid of my placeholders. Okay. In fact, I might delete 2 of these cells. This is when you've decided, okay, I'm happy enough with the style and the layout. I'm going to start putting things in here. So I'm going to get rid of my placeholder. And I'm going to create a new card. I'm going to call this my team card. Oop, and type. So my team card, I'm going to add a inner. Now inner, I'm going to add a block, which will be my header wrapper. Duplicate that a few times. I've got my body wrapper, a footer wrapper, and I'm going to add my media. I'm just going to drag this out of that inner because I want that to go to the full width. And we've got a setup there. Now, in my inner header wrapper, we need a heading. we'll call this our title. In my body wrapper, I'm just going to put a basic call out. And in my footer wrapper, I'm going to put a link, which is not shown here. So I'm going to bring that up. Okay, I'm going to add a link in there. Of course, our footer link. In our media, I'm going to add a image, and we are done. I'll call this photo. This is our team members, so I'm going to call it their photo. I've still got a team card ready to go. I'm going to right click on that. I'm going to use my class converter and hit create classes. I'm then going to just go to the left hand side. I'm going to set element as root because we don't, when we run a class converter above this, we don't want it to create BEM elements for all of these elements. We want this to be a standalone component in the sense, BEM component. So what we'll do is make it a root component, and that tells the AT auto BEM creator when it gets to this, do not create elements from that because that's a standalone root component. And that's it. All right, so now we can start styling up. So we're going to change our title. It's going to be an H3. Okay, we're going to use our call out there. That's okay. If I go to the body wrapper, header wrapper, we might just add some padding on that. So we'll get padding all around. I'll just use an XS padding, I think. XS padding on that. That's probably even too big, 2XS. Same as on the body. Oops. And look, this would be so much quicker to go through if I wasn't yakking about it. So that's the body, footer. And also you can use CSS to target all of these if you wish. I'm just showing you using the UI as a lot of you might do. All right, now, what are we going to do here? We're going to get rid of our, because we've got this gap here, actually no, I'm not going to stick that at the top there. So on our media wrapper, I want that to go to the top. So we're going to use the order. Where's our order? I think because that's a block, it'll be on this content. It is. So with the order input, on some elements it's on the content and some it's in the style, so and under the layout. I'm not sure why that is, but let's just do that. So we're going to stick our image at the top there. Okay, now on our inner we're going to put some padding on that. We'll do the same padding. We'll do the XS padding, 2XS padding on the inner. All right, now on the on the actual card, let's add some border. Is that the border? That's the border. So these icons have all changed. I'm still getting used to those icons. So we're going to add maybe a width of just 1 pixel. Solid. And we'll use our right click on this color picker here so we get the AT picker. We're going to use a neutral transparency. You could use the black transparency if you want to use that, or white transparency. I like to use the neutral. Then it is, because it's a medium color, it'll work with both the dark backgrounds and the light backgrounds. All right, so we're starting to sort of push together a card. All right, now I'm going to grab my team card and I'm going to turn that into a query loop. On my query, I'm going to select my team members, and I only want, actually I want all of them, so I'm going to do a -1 so I get all of my team members, and it shows I've only got 3 there. So on my image, now we've got a query loop. We go to the image and we're going to set the source. I would normally put a fallback image here. So I'll show you a trick here. I don't think I've got a placeholder. Let me actually have a look, see if I've got a placeholder. Actually, I don't think I have. I think I created one but didn't download it. Let me just grab it. I forgot about downloading it. Is it this one here? It is. So it's got a placeholder. All right, so I'm going to add my placeholder there. Probably wouldn't use such a big one. Okay, going to use the placeholder in the background there, and I'll just use a smaller version of that. Placeholder, and then what you do is add source at the desktop breakpoint, and then we use our dynamic data, and we're going to use the photo from the from the CPT. So what that's going to do is it'll have a fallback to this placeholder unless that image exists. If the image exists, it's going to put in this. That's a really, really simple way of having a fallback. Okay, now typical Bricks, it hasn't updated all of this. I'm going to hit the save and refresh. It does some weird things, this editor, with the current optimizations on it. There we go. Now they're all in the right order, in the right place. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to look at changing the color set of these here. So I'm just going to grab the team card. I'm going to add my color set. And then color set of, let's say, a neutral D5. All right. So we'll put a color set inside a color set. If I look at that on the front end, did that load? No, because I did a refresh. Okay, so now I've got a color set for my hero. I've got a color set for my team. I've got color sets on the cards. Cool, right? Now let's have a look at adding some hover effect to that. So with the color sets, you can do so many things. So I'm going to create a custom one so that when I hover, I want to change the color set background to be a gradient. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a color set variation here. I'm just going to call it color set dash dash. So it's got to be color set dash dash for it to apply correctly with the CSS. So whatever name, do not use the AT prefix, because this is not an AT class, it is your class. So we're going to call this color set, and we're going to call this card hover. Color set card hover. All right. Now we can do a couple of things on here. One of them is that we can grab from the color set. We can have a look at the color set there and say, what do we want to override? We want to override the background. So we got a background variable there. We can use CSS on this and override the background. So I'm going to show you that. So if we go to the color set hover, we can use a root background, and we'll make that red. Okay, so we've just made the background red. We can do that, or we can use our, so for example, the gradient overlay. And we can say we want to make the background a linear gradient with right click. Say we want to go from a primary dark 5 to a secondary dark 4, and we've got a gradient there. It's not actually showing correctly there for some reason. Why isn't that showing there? Maybe we'll go from black. There we go. It was too close. And we've got no angle. So I'm going to maybe put a 30-degree angle on it so it looks a bit different. So you can see it's got like that black down the bottom, a little bit of primary at the top there. However, this just changes the whole card. Where maybe I just want to change it on hover. So I'm going to get rid of that gradient overlay there. I'm going to select my hover state. And I'm going to apply a gradient here. So I'm going to make that as 30-degree angle. And I'm going to add the primary. So we'll make it a primary secondary. Is that my secondary? Sorry, that's my secondary. Look at primary D2. And we'll add the color here of, again, we're right clicking on these to get the AT picker, primary D5, D6, really, okay, let me swap those around. Yeah, it's weird how that's displaying. So let's swap around. So we've got the dark at the bottom and the light at the top, but that's only on hover because we're using our hover pseudo state. Let's have a look at what that looks like up here. So that's normal, that's hover. That's normal, hover. All right. Okay, now let's have a look at what that is. And I'm going to show you how you do this with CSS. So I'm just working through this as I think through it. So I'm going to bring this up, I'm going to look at that, and I'm going to set the card. Where's my card? Okay, for state, hover. So we can get our color set there. Here's our color set there. I'm going to grab that. Sorry, we've got my little loom bar on the way here. I'm just going to grab that background image linear gradient. We just need the actual property value. So we need the property. I'm going to grab that. I'm going to go back to my utility classes here. I'm going to get rid of that so we don't have anything in the UI. We're going to do this at the CSS level, and I'll show you why. So we can add this at the CSS level. And I'm going to add root is hover, comma, focus within. Okay, and we're going to set our background, I think it's just background, to what we just copied from there. There we go. So now what we've got here is, in fact, I'm just going to change that text link. I don't think I set that to be I didn't. So we're going to dynamic data. And what are we going to do? We're going to set it to the post link. All right. Now, what we've done is we've made these actual links. And in the CSS for the card here, I've set CSS on the card, not on the team card, on the team card hover, so that if it's focused or hovered, then we want to set the background. Now let's have a look at what happens there. If I press the tab key, it focuses on the text link, I get my hover state. All right? Now, why we do it this way? It's just, I think, just gives you a lot more control. So I would even go as far as we'd set a transition of all, and I'm going to use my duration variable from AT. So I'm going to say duration slow ease. All right. Now I'm going to then, in fact, I'm just going to take that off there because I want it to go in both directions. I'm just going to do a root transition all because we want it to transition when it's both focused and not focused. And then what we're going to do is do a transform of translate y, I don't know, minus, actually we just use our distance. So use our distance variable. So we want to do a distance small. There, it's a transition of distance small over a fixed time. If we want that to be fast, fast transition. We want it to be medium. Medium transition. The beauty of doing it using these variables is that if you want these transition times or distances or whatever to change over the entire website, you go to your variables up here, you go into your transitions, and you change what those are. So fast, medium, slow, distance, small, medium, large. All right? Because you've referenced those, wherever you've referenced them, they all change. So we're getting there, right? We're getting there. Now, you can do this with box shadows. You can do this with whatever you want. So the point here is that you can use the UI and use these hover states or what I call them, the pseudo states up here, or you can just use the CSS tab and put it in there manually and override variables. You can make this so that it has its own variations. So you might have, for example, this here, you might make that a variable that you can override by making modifiers for that. All right, so that is the cards, the movement, etc. Now, what I would typically do on here is I wouldn't make that a link. I would not make that a link. I would get rid of that. I would make that like a pill or something like that, and I'd make my heading the link. Okay, so let's have a look at doing that. So in here, I'm going to grab my heading. I'm going to make that dynamic. So it's the title, and we're going to turn that into a link. Okay, so now it's a link. We're going to grab our body copy. I'm going to make that our call out. A call out from our team member. And in the link, I'm going to actually get rid of the link there. I'm just going to make that read more. Okay, and we might style this up here. So on that read more link, we're going to just go into our typography. We're going to set that to be a line height of 1. Okay, we're going to set some padding on that. So let's set some padding on it. Where's our padding gone? And we'll use our 2XS padding on that. We'll go to the border and let's add a, we'll use our neutral maybe there. Oh, that's the background. What am I doing on the background? We're going to go to the border. So I'm getting confused between these icons here. Okay, and we're going to use solid. We're going to use we'll use a neutral, say in the medium there, maybe there. And we're going to use a all-round radius. So I'm just going to use radius dash dash. And I think we'll just use full radius full. So you could start typing. Once you know what these are, you can just start typing what they are. Radius 2XS. Has my full one disappeared? Let me have a look here. Oops. Huh? AT radius full. There you go. And that will be on all sides. Okay, so we're like a little pill there rather than having the link on there. Now we've got our link is our title. That's just a display. It just says read more. It's the display. So how do we make this link cover the entire card? We go back to the card. We add our util variable from AT, which is the clickable. And we call this AT clickable box. So you add that to the card. That finds the first link in the card, should only be one link in that card, and makes that clickable area extend to the entire box. So let's actually have a look at that on the front end. All right, so we have a clickable card. We're losing it with that. There's something wrong with I thought we had a Z index on that. Let's have a look at that. Where is it's a box, team card inner, body wrapper, header wrapper, H2. No, I thought I put the Z index on there. I didn't. I forgot to. Okay, let's just go to, so we want that to be on top of the image. So let's just go to the header wrapper and just set our Z index on the header wrapper to be Z index of 1. Does that do it for us? Yeah. Now the whole card you can see is clickable. just by adding that to there. All right, so we're getting there. We're just starting to style up these cards just by using our utilities, etc. All right, what else can we do here? Just thinking through as I talk. Oh, focus. We want to focus. So at the moment, when we tab, it's going to show our focus around the title because that's the link. So we tab, focus on the title. We want to focus on the outside. We basically go to our team card, type in focus, and we want to focus focus here. Focus here. Well, that's the best way to put it because we want to focus here on this box. So we want to take the focus off anything that's inside of this and focus here. And we should only have one link in there when we do that anyway. So if we say focus here, tab, okay, tab, we can see the focus is on the outside of that box, even though the link is the actual title there. And then we've got focus colors. So let's say we focus secondary. Sorry, I'm in the wrong box here. Need to hide that thing. We'll make it secondary and see what that looks like on there. So AT focus secondary. Okay, we're going to use our secondary color for the focus here. All right, now, so you can see how we just basically wireframe out these things, duplicate them, add bits in that we want, and then we go back and style them up using our utilities and custom CSS. So another issue I'm looking at here as I talk, as I'm looking at that, and we want to push this to the bottom. So on our inner, because our inner is inside of our team card, we want to make sure we set our flex grow to 1 so it fills the entire card. So you can see that pushed it down there. And then in our body wrapper, we want our body to take up the space inside of that as well. So we get the body wrapper, set flex grow to 1. That makes our body fill and pushes the read more to the bottom there. There we go. So we're starting to get somewhere near. We probably want to do a bit more styling on there, remove a little bit of space at the top there. So we're getting there though. We also might want to use some line clamps. So for example, you might have really long titles. Actually, let's change one of those. Let's go back to one of these titles. Team member. I'm going to do a quick edit on that. Mendoza, I don't know, the bomb dev. Okay. So we got a really long name on that. Going to now just refresh this page, refresh the editor. Okay, now we've got Sarah, the bomb dev, and she's rapping, right? Because her title's too long to fit in there. So we can do a couple of things here. We can go to that title. Actually, we're going to go to the first one there on the team card, and we can set our font size on that to be text large, for example, right? So we change the size of it, text medium. We can do that, or we can go to that title and we can actually add a utility class, which is a clamp. So we're going to use our line clamp. So AT line clamp. I'm not sure why these variables are showing up here. That's a bit odd. AT line clamp. Oh, it's because I was in that. Back to this team card. There we go. That's why we're showing up while I was typing in there. So we're going to add the AT line clamp, which does nothing yet. It just has the CSS to apply variable. And we're going to say it's a clamp of 1, right? So we want this to line clamp to one line. So I've put a few in there. There's 1 through to, what do we got? I can't remember. 1 through to 5, and then you can create your own. So here we go. We've got a line clamp on that one. And there we go. We've got a line clamp there, keeping it all nice and stable. All right. So the next thing I wanted to quickly go through is, again, I'm ad-libbing here, so excuse me if I keep going sideways here. There's so much to talk about, and I want to show you bits and pieces of all of these things if I can. Okay, so let's say, for example, my latest post here, we want to change the way that looks. So we're going to go to our latest post. We're going to get rid of the placeholder XL off there. Just get rid of both those. Duplicate that again. Okay. And what do we do for the grid here? We set that to a grid of 3. So we're going to go to our first one and we're going to say, actually, we're going to change that to a grid of 2. We're going to change that there to a grid of 2. And you know, when you get these libraries and you find that there's lots of variations of the same thing, it's just different grid layouts, right? So you can go in here and say, okay, grid 3, grid 2 on this one here at the ID level. So we're going to get rid of the class that's selected. We want to do this at the ID level. We want to span over 2 rows. So we go span 2. All right, now we've got a bento grid where we've got 2 on the left hand, 1 on the right hand side, and it works, right? So what are we going to put inside here? We're going to now get rid of these placeholders. Let's get rid of the placeholders. Okay, actually, let's get rid of these. We're going to, actually, let's do this as a loop. I'll show you how you can do this as a loop. So what we're going to do here is we're going to turn that into a loop. So we're going to add inside of that cell, we're going to add an image, and we're going to add our a utility class I created, which has. This is not in the framework. This is just in my own class. So I've got a class called has BG media. Okay, and then on the image, we're going to call that the BG has BG media. That's the actual media that we've got, right? And on that media, it's disappeared because of we don't have a minimum height. So I'm going to set on this cell here on my sections post cell, I'm going to set a minimum height of, I'm going to say 100 pixels. Okay, minimum height of 100 pixels. And there's our media there. Okay, so on that cell, I'm going to turn that into a query loop. It's going to be our posts, but we only want 3 posts. Okay, and we can change this to featured posts, whatever you want, right? And what we're going to do is on this grid here, we're going to target the second cell and we're going to change the row span on that. So I'm going to go grid, go into my CSS. I'm going to do root, followed by anything that is the nth child of 2. Set my rows, grid row to be a span of 2. All right, so we've just done the same kind of thing. Why didn't that show up in here? Maybe this just doesn't edit root. That should be working. Maybe it's just the display in here. We'll have a look at that shortly. 2. Some weird stuff happening in here. It's Maxime. Okay, span of 2. Now on our media, we're going to then grab the media. And the media, I'm going to do the same thing. We're going to set a fallback image, fallback. The fallback we'll just do at the 768. Then on our desktop breakpoint, we're going to use the dynamic data of featured image. Okay, there we go. So we've got our post grid here with our featured images in it as a background, right? Now, what else can we do with that? We can then set on the grid here, we can set our gap. Maybe we want a smaller gap, so we want a grid gap small. Okay, so we have a small grid gap. What do we want to do? Maybe we want to put the title in there as well. So actually going to put the title in there. And the heading, we'll make it a heading 3. We'll make that our post title. And we'll make that a link as well. Okay, it's there. And maybe on our cell here, we might want some padding on there. And we'll use our small padding. There we go. And what are we going to do for color on our title? Oh no, that Maxine, what are we doing here? Okay, on our title, let's give it a color. I'm going to right click on that and we'll give it our primary or secondary, make it our primary L6. Whatever you're doing, it doesn't really matter. We may have an overlay. Let's have an overlay. Where's our overlays? Overlay, add color. And use our blacks. Oh, not on the title. We don't want the overlay. We want it on the actual cell. Overlay. There we go. Overlay. And another cool little one we're going to add to this cell here. We've got the has BG media. I'm going to has BG media transform. All right, save that. Have our latest post. Now we've got a little transform on our hover here, plus we've got a link to going to those posts. So yeah, it's just, I mean, I see some libraries and you'll have a version of this where you've got, 2 rows on the left and, one spanning 2 rows on the right. And then you'll have another version where it's the opposite way around. And you have one where it's, one long one at the top and then 2 at the bottom, and they're all separate versions. Why do you need them when all you have to do is target these? So let's go, for example, back to our grid here and have a look at our CSS. And we're going to have a look in here and we're going to we're going to actually target each of these. So we're going to do 1, 2, and 3. All right, let's change the way these work. So I'm going to use so at the moment, we want the row to span 1. Just put it to where it was already, and we want to do grid columns. So I got some weird things happening in here. Column, we want to span 1. Let's get these. Oh, it's automatically adding things here. I'm sure it's just a matter of getting used to the changes here, but it was a little bit distracting. Okay, so let's say we don't want this here. We want a long one at the top and then 2 small ones at the bottom. So we would change all of these to be grid span 1 that's for the row, and we're going to set the bottom one to be a column span of 2. All right, we've got a different layout, column span of 2. And now we've got 2 at the top, 1 at the bottom. Go to our grid here. I think we set this through there, did we? No, it was on the cell, sorry. On the cell, we set the minimum height somewhere here. We might make that, 200 pixels. All right, so we just changed that again, just by changing CSS properties. I mean, you don't need 5 different versions of this. You just go through and change those properties as you see fit, right? Okay, now let's have a look at this whole container here. We've got a section post. Let's give it some color. color set, and just color set. Maybe it's a neutral light we want, because it's got all these darks everywhere. So it's a neutral light 4. Alright, so we're just giving that whole section there a color set. Where are we getting to? Let's have a look at the actual home page. So if we go to here, we've got a hero, we've got a team section, we've got an about section we haven't done anything with, we've got placeholders in there, we've got our latest posts, probably have a button down here to view all. What else can we do here? Okay, in our hero, we can now decide, okay, we want to put a image on the right hand side. What we do, go to our hero, collapse everything here, go to our hero. Okay, now in our container we've got, what have we got here? A lead, CTA button, and a whatever. Alright, let's add a grid in here. Oh, I'm starting to get laggy. Okay, now that grid there, we're going to add a cell. Okay, so let's go right click on our section hero now, class converter, and create classes. We should just get to 2 classes there. Alright, now what we're going to do is move all of our, oops, we're getting laggy again for some reason. Okay, so we're in the header here. Now on our grid here, which is our section hero grid, let's turn that into a grid. And let's make that a grid of, we've got a grid of say 2, 1. Alright, so now we've got a grid here, and we can add maybe an image, so we're just going to add another cell. Okay, probably should have just duplicated that. Get rid of that, get rid of that, get rid of that. Stick an image in there. Select an image. There we go. Maybe it's this dude here. Boo. We might do a object fit, cover, aspects ratio. Actually, we'll just leave that as it is. Border. Just put a radius on it. Okay, so we've got a bit of an image in the background here. Now what we want to do is put maybe we'll put the same image in the background. That would be cool. Let's have a look at the section hero. So we're going to put has media, BG media. We're going to add a image. And in that image there, we're going to call that our BG has BG media media. We're going to set that to be a figure. Select the same image. Set that. Make that a full size. Okay, maybe we want that to transition as well. So here's me BG Media Transform. We've got a background image there. Now we want some gradient overlay on just on that hero section. So let's just select the top here. Just on the section hero class, let's add a gradient overlay on that. And we'll go from maybe a black T2 to black T6. How are we going here? Okay, we might want to, on our lead, we might change the max width on that to be 40 CH. Alright, so we're starting to build out. We've got a hero with a floating image here. We've got a background image as an image. So we can put our alt tags on there if we want to. We can even have different images at different breakpoints just by using the this one here. At different breakpoints, we can change the image just by using the content. Where is it? Add sources. Change different images at different breakpoints. So we've got a lot of features that we can use that you wouldn't get from just a standard CSS background. We're starting to build out some content here, right? Now, you come along and you go, okay, so I built out all this content and the customer's given me a different color set. They've given me a different style guide now, so what do I do? Easy. You go back to your editor on any page, you go to your color manager, okay, they actually want this kind of purple color here as their primary color. Maybe we'll put a bit more saturation, a bit less saturation, maybe it's there. So I would normally grab that. I would go to my neutral, I would paste that in there, go to my HSLA, make sure it's on 50% because my neutral I think should be 50%, and then we're going to take out all the saturation. I want back that say 8% for our neutral here, and then maybe we'll leave our, actually let's change that as well. Say they gave us a more of a different blue, or maybe it's a green, purple and green, maybe purple and mustard. There we go. Save database. We've just changed our complete style. See, even in the greys, they're not quite grey. It's got our neutral in there. Save that, and we've got a different color set based on just changing that color scheme by using these color sets. Our accent text changed, our button changed, our background here changed, our hover changed. The greys have a very slight purple in them because we got 8% of the purple in there. Yeah, so that's pretty much, I think I'll leave it at that. That's a lot to go through, but that's how I'd kind of build out using this framework in its simplicity at least anyway. So I'll leave it at that, and the next video will work through where do we change all the settings for these and keep it consistent.